let me just comment on two of the things you just said.
Mm-hmm.
The U.S. also has an extraterritoriality law that makes it possible to prosecute Americans who abused a child in another country.
Oh, okay. I did not know.
So the U.S. passed it, one version in 1994 and then strengthened it in 2003. And they have made a number of cases against American traveling sex offenders. So it has been useful in kind of prosecuting some of the worst offenders. It is a difficult law to enforce because it's expensive and complicated logistically, because evidence has to be collected in a foreign jurisdiction, but to meet the same rules of evidence that a U.S. court would need to see. So there are challenges in making those prosecutions, but the U.S. government has been going ahead and doing that.
Mm-hmm. How many cases do you think come through?
I don't know anymore. They used to put a press release out every time they did one. So as of a few years ago, I know that they had about 60 cases, 60 cases. Mm-hmm. But I don't know where they are now. PET is an international organization in now 75 countries. We started in Asia in 1991, focused initially on sex tourism in Thailand, Taiwan, Sri Lanka, and the Philippines. But rapidly realized that if you want to protect children from commercial sexual exploitation, you can't keep your focus on those 4 countries, because really commercial sexual exploitation of children happens everywhere. So we now work on it everywhere, and continue to work on it in Asia, where Americans are involved in Asia. But of course, Americans travel to many other countries as well. At the time ECPAT started, we put a big focus internationally on passing extraterritoriality laws. And a number of states have them, and states that don't have specific to sex tourism extraterritoriality laws do usually have some kind of law under which one of their citizens can be prosecuted for the same types of crimes. It's kind of a difficult thing to research because you're looking at all different kinds of laws.
Mm-hmm. Can you explain to me what you guys do to promote awareness during Super Bowl and sporting events? What is your relationship with that?
Yeah, there's been lots of controversy about that issue. And also, the issue of commercial sexual exploitation of children there's kind of a consensus that children should be protected from sex all the time, from sexual exploitation all the time. That does not translate into a similar consensus around adult sexual exploitation or sex work or prostitution or sex, the sex trade. Mm-hmm. So, ECPAT only focuses on people under 18, and there's been lots of controversy around the Super Bowl over whether people are trafficked to meet demand at the Super Bowl, and some groups saying, no, there's nothing to suggest that happens, and other groups saying that there's lots of it. Most of that argument happens at the international level with international advocacy groups talking about it. Okay, so we have no really good statistics about the scale of child sexual exploitation in the United States or anywhere else, quite frankly. And I can talk most knowledgeably about the U.S. Mm-hmm. So we don't have good numbers broadly. When the 2 studies that ECPAT USA feels comfortable citing are the 2001 study from the University of Pennsylvania, estimating 200,000 to 300,000 kids at risk for sexual exploitation in the U.S. Mm-hmm. And then a couple of years ago, the John Jay College in New York, along with the Center for Court Innovation, published a report about child sexual exploitation in New York City, estimating a little under 4,000 kids who are sexually exploited in New York. So those are the 2 studies that I feel comfortable using. Mm-hmm. Now, Super Bowl. How many kids are sexually exploited during Super Bowl? Nobody knows. There's never been a study that I know of, or certainly not one that has been whose methodology is universally accepted, although universal acceptance of methodologies in this world is pretty hard to come by anyway. But I don't know of a study. Now, that said, we do use large sporting events as an awareness-raising opportunity. Now that the prospect has been raised that it's possible that trafficking increases to meet the demand of these large sporting events, we do use it as a time to promote the code of conduct, to get companies to put in place prevention policies, to train their staff to know what to do if they see something. Mm-hmm. So we ECPAT USA, which is based in New York City, has been offering information and materials to advocacy groups in cities where the Super Bowl has taken place in the past, but we have not been operational on the ground ourselves because we're quite a small staff. That said, the next Super Bowl will be in northern New Jersey, and so the entire New York region will be impacted by it, and we are mobilizing right now to reach out to hotels and partner organizations and elected officials to put in place steps for the protection of kids from sexual exploitation during that period. Yeah, well, we are, we have,
oops, hello?
Oh, you can't hear me anymore? What happened?
No, it just went out for like a second.
Oh, okay. We do have a number of companies that have signed the Code of Conduct, so it's easy for us to reach out to them to encourage them to do retraining in preparation for the Super Bowl and to make sure that, you know, all of their steps of their protocol are in place for what they're going to do and, you know, if they see something. So that's what we'll do with the existing companies. We are currently seeking meetings with security staff at non-Code of Conduct companies in the region, and we are partnering with the New York City Mayor's office to try to get access. It is difficult to get companies to pay attention to our message. So the best thing we have found to do is to go through routes, people who do have access and who are willing to open the door for us. So that might be through elected officials as we're trying now. Often we will get there by working with responsible investor groups who are usually investment companies that have a lot of money to invest and use their ownership of stock in different companies to encourage that company to do good. Mm-hmm. And so we have partnered with churches, for example, or some of the, you know, I call them companies, but they're just entities that have a lot of money that they invest in stock. And when they own stock, then they can get a meeting with the general counsel at that hotel company, for example, easier than ECPAT USA can. Mm-hmm. And so then they will bring us along and introduce us and encourage the dialogue to have that company come along. So we use different routes to get the attention of companies that wouldn't naturally just want to work with us because they don't see how their business overlaps with what we talk about. So we have a lot of education to do among companies. It takes a long time.
So are you guys looking into preparing for the Super Bowl in New Jersey? Are you looking into like hotels in Connecticut and surrounding areas because everything's really close?
Yeah, we hope to do the tri-state area. Mm-hmm. Again, we're a small staff, so we don't have 100 people to fan out across the region. But we'll use whatever leverage we feel we can most effectively use to get in the door with companies. Mm-hmm. We'll also reach out to the Super Bowl planning committee, team owners. Not that I'm optimistic that they will be that amenable to talking to us, but it doesn't have to just be the hotel company.
Have you found a travel agency that has promoted a city with, known sex trafficking or sex tourism? I mean, do they promote that at all?
No, I don't. Well, adult prostitution, you'll definitely.
Yeah, yes.
But kids, no, you won't see that in the United States because, in fact, you did see American sex tour companies years ago when we first started actually advertising sex tour in even child sex tours. Now, they weren't advertising it for travel in the United States. They were advertising it to Americans
Mm-hmm.
for travel abroad. I never saw it in the United States, but the Department of Justice was also seeing those ads, and now they don't put them up anymore. So they've kind of stopped talking about promoting child sex tourism. At least U.S. companies have
Uh-huh.
stopped doing that. That said, the child prostitution enterprise is not separate from the adult prostitution enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, what I mean is that sexually exploited youth who are not prepubescent,
Mm-hmm.
prepubescent kids who are used in prostitution, sold for sex, are seen as victims. Nobody, has any qualms about calling the people who buy sex with young children rapists, locking them up, throwing the book at them. But in the United States, once a girl, I should say, has developed, I mean, boys and girls are both sexually exploited, but I'm going to be talking about girls for a minute. Once she's developed, basically, she's past puberty and she looks more womanly. She is recruited and integrated into the adult sex market. So any man who patronizes one of the prostitution sites might be buying a young girl, whether he acknowledges it or not, or knows it or not. So, and that's there's so many barriers we have to raising awareness and stopping that because of, first of all, prostitution being seen overall as a victimless crime in the United States. Well, women do it because they like it and they need the money, and she's working her way through law school, and it's really no harm done. She likes it and she gets a lot of money, so there's nothing wrong with it. So we shouldn't do anything about it. But it gets confusing in people's minds when they consider, well, she might have actually been 14 years old
When she started, or
yeah,
or even 12.
current,
Yeah.
yeah. And and then the buyer says, "Oh well, I didn't know she was that young," or the cop says, "Well, I wouldn't want to get a guy in trouble because he didn't know she was that young." And so we have all kinds of confusion about what to do about these young kids who are then, of course, often arrested and treated as a criminal because they have, sold sex, been involved in prostitution.